All right, hi everyone. This is Gryffindor Math, Chapter 1, Lesson 6, Solve Proportional Relationships. Okay, so this whole idea about solving proportional relationships, we're actually going to teach you what's called the butterfly method. I'm going to zoom in here so it's easier for you to see. Okay, so here's my butterfly. Aren't they pretty? My pretty butterflies. Now, of course, you can color this if you would like to. It's completely up to you. So, we're going to talk about solving proportional relationships. So, make sure you have a pen or a pencil handy. It says a blank is an equation stating that two ratios or rates are blank. So, in that first blank, you're going to write proportion. Okay? So, in that first blank, you're going to write proportion. And in the second blank, you're going to write equivalent. So in the first blank is proportion, in the second blank is equivalent. Okay, so a proportion is an equation stating that two ratios or rates are equivalent. Remember, we talked about ratios and rates. We talked about the fact that they need to have different things on the top and the bottom. On the numerator and the denominator, they need to have two different ideas. So inches to miles, or all of those would be considered examples of rates. Okay. Now we can see here 6/8 equals 3/4, okay? These two things are proportion, and the reason they're proportion is because if I take 6/8 and I simplify it, I get 3/4, okay? That's what this actually says right here. It says A over B equals C over D when B does not equal 0 and D does not equal 0. Remember, we can't have a 0 in the denominator of a fraction, because if we recall back, a fraction bar is the same thing as saying we're dividing something, okay? So next over here, we're gonna go follow the butterflies, okay? It says the products AD and BC are called the blank blank of this proportion, okay? The first one is cross, and the second word is products, okay? So cross products. So the products of AD and BC are called the cross products of this proportion. The cross products of any proportion, that's really important. So any proportion, the cross products are equal. Okay? If they are not equal, it means it's not a proportional relationship. Okay, the only way it's proportional is if their cross products are equal. Okay. We can double check this down here. You can see I have my butterfly drawn. So I had 6/8 equals 3/4. I drew my butterfly around the 6/4, okay, and the 8/3. That's the cross product, so they form this X, okay. We call it a butterfly because it kind of, if you add antennas to it, it kind of looks like a butterfly. So I'm taking 8/3, 8 times 3, that equals 24, over 6 times 4, which also equals 24. Now if I simplify this, I get 1. Which means they are proportional, they are equal to one another. All right, now let's take a look at the example that they give us. If the ratio of type O to non-type O donors at a blood drive was 37/43, how many donors would be type O out of 300? So the first thing that I want to do is actually set up my proportion. So they've done that for us, okay? So I go back and I look at my problem. I have type O and non-type O donors, right? The ratio they give us was 37 to 43. That's type O to non-type O. Okay. But I want to know how many donors would be type O out of 300. Okay. So we're not actually in the end comparing type O to non-type O donors. We're comparing type O to all of the donors. Okay. So when I set up my proportion, I'm setting it up as type O donors over the total number of donors that I have. So there were 37 people that were type O, according to my proportion they gave me, to 43 that were non-type O, but I want total. So I'm going to add these together. I'm going to add 37 plus 43. That gives me my 80. Okay, so now I have 37 type O and 80 total donors. That's what they told me about, okay? I'm not done though, right? So now I need to say, write a proportion, let T represent the number of type O donors. You don't have to use T, you can use X, Y, Z, A, B, any letter in the alphabet that you would like to, all right? So I set up the proportion that I already created, 37 over 80, that's my first ratio, right? Equals T, because that's what I don't know, that's what I want to figure out, over 300, that's how many people donated. Okay, and I wanted to figure out how many type O donors they have. So now I have T over 300. Now, I'm going to take this and I'm going to multiply using my cross products, or multiply by the butterfly. Okay. So here's my butterfly. This means I have 37 times 300, and it's still equal to 80 times T. Now when I multiply that, 37 times 300 gives me 11,100, and 80 times T gives me 80 T. Now in order to get T by itself, I have to divide by 80, because the opposite of multiplication is division. So you use the opposite operation. So I divide this by 80, and whatever I do to one side of an equation, I have to do to the other side. So this 80 cancels out. I'm left with T, and then I have 11,100 divided by 80, and that gives me 138.75. Now you have to be careful, okay? Because we're talking about people. It doesn't make sense for us not to have a whole number here, okay? The proportion is correct. We did all the math right, okay? But our answer, we don't have 138 and 3/4 of a person, right? So we would have 139, about 139 type O donors. Okay. So now go ahead, pause the video, and do the 2 try-it problems at the bottom of the page. And when you're done trying them, we'll go over them. All right, now that you've tried the 2 try-it problems out, we'll go over the answers together. So the first try-it problem states the ratio of 7th grade students to 8th grade students in a soccer league is 17 to 23. If there are 200 students in all, how many are in the 7th grade? Okay, so this is very similar to the problem that we did up here together. So let's work it out. First, I know a couple of things, right? The first thing I know is that I have a ratio of 7th to 8th. That ratio is 17 to 23. But I want to know the ratio of 7th to all. Okay, so I know there are 17 7th graders compared to 23 8th graders, but I want all of them, so I'm going to add them together. 17 plus 23. 7 plus 3 gives me 10. 2 plus 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4. So 7 compared to all is 17 to 40. So now I can set my proportion up. 7th grade to all students, and that's 17 over 40, and that's equal to, right? Now in my problem it told me there were 200 students in all. So which one's going to be my variable and what's going to be the 200? So the 7th grade, I don't know. That's what I'm trying to find out. That's going to be my variable. You can use whatever variable you would like. I'm going to use X to represent my 7th grade students. And then 200 to represent all my students because that's the ratio they gave me. So this is all 7th grade. Notice 7th grade, 7th graders on the top. All students on the bottom. Proportions only work when you set them up so that they look like this. So that your numerators are the same. You're comparing the same things on the top to what's on the bottom. You're comparing your same numerator to your same denominator. Okay? Now I can multiply by the butterfly. Okay, so I'm multiplying 17 times 200 and 40 times X. So there's my butterfly. 17 times 200 gives me 3,400, and 40 times X gives me 40X. Then I need to get X by itself. Well, here I'm multiplying. So the opposite of multiplication is division. Okay, so I'm going to divide by 40. This cancels out. I'm left with X. 3,400 divided by 40 gives me 85. So this tells me that if I have 200 students in all, I will have 85 7th grade students. Okay. Now the second try it problem says, Olivia typed 2 pages in 15 minutes. Write an equation relating the number of minutes, M, to the number of pages P typed. How long will it take her to type 10 pages at this rate? So, first thing I want to do is figure out what I'm comparing. So she said 2 pages in 15 minutes. Okay? So that's going to be my rate. I'm comparing pages, P, to minutes, M. And that's what they told me, okay? So I have 2 to 15. So 2 pages, 15 minutes, right? Now it doesn't really matter which way you set this up. You can put minutes on the top or pages on the bottom. It did tell us in the problem that we're relating minutes to the number of pages typed, so you probably want to set it up that way. So they told us minutes, M, over pages, P. Now the first they gave us was 15 was 2, and that equals blank. Now they told us they wanted to know how long it will take her to type 10 pages. So we'll 10 go on the numerator or the denominator? That's right. It goes on the denominator side because that's pages. Okay. Then what goes on the top? An M, because that stands for minutes. Okay. Now we're going to take this and we'll multiply by the butterfly. So I have 15 times 10 equals 2 times M. This gives me 150 equals 2M. Divide both sides by 2. It's 75 equals M because these cancel out. So this tells me 75 is my answer. 75 equals M, which stands for minutes. So Olivia can type 10 pages in 75 minutes. Okay. And look for the next video on Chapter 1, Lesson 7.